My name is Damian Pardo. I'm your host. And to my right is my co-host, JC, Jonathan Casanas, on the board of Forward Miami, also a social media influencer, entertainer extraordinaire.
I tell you one story and now I'm an entertainer extraordinaire.
I say entertainer extraordinaire.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That sounds nice. It's a good title.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get our watch party here.
Yeah, I'm going to do it too, because apparently that watch party is going away soon. But
obviously I'm not great at this.
Neither am I. But anyway, good. So today we're going to have a good show because I'm experiencing a lot these days about toxic masculinity and being on the spectrum in terms of being feminine or masculine and being too woke. Honestly, that's how I'm taking it. It's being too woke. So let me tell you why. Let me tell you why this came up. So I've been given an opportunity to be a creator or an influencer, like a social media influencer. And so I do a lot of posts. I do a lot of content now on social media. And I did a post where it's like the Ariana concert of people clapping, you know, like cheering. And well, it's a trend that's happening on TikTok now. So I decided to do one. I woke up one day in the morning and I said, what if I do one? Because a lot of people think that I'm straight. I'm obviously not. I'm very much homosexual.
I think people.
I'm very gay. I'm very gay. Yeah. And so I said it would be funny if on the caption it said, when a straight guy thinks I'm straight, and then I walk in and people cheer. And in the video, I pretend like I'm pretty masculine, and then I just get into my normal stuff where I do the mannerisms and stuff. And I got a lot of comments. I mean, I got like over 2,500 comments, by the way. Most of them were positive, but I got so many of people saying, wow, this is toxic as hell. And I was like, okay, is it too woke, or is it that, you know, it is toxic? It is like an age where, you know, cheering for someone who is masculine when they're gay is a bit much, or it's a bit
I think
dated.
you have to go. I mean, I think you have to go back, roll that back, and,
Sure.
and think about gender in general.
Yeah.
Right? Like what is masculine, what is feminine, and then where do people fall within that? Because for a lot of folks, gender is not something they even think about. You know,
right?
Like in their family, you know, they do the gender reveal party. You do the little blue powder comes out, you know, like you know,
a million ways that you can gender reveal.
Right. And for a lot of folks also, you know what, there's enough going on in life to then stop and have to like rethink gender.
Yeah. Well, but there are things that are obvious, right? We know what's masculine.
Right.
We know what's feminine. Can we agree on that though? Like, are people still thinking that there is no masculinity anymore? Like everyone's on the spectrum? Or is it that, you know, when you're a woman, you're not a woman? You know what I mean? Like I think people are starting to blur those lines a bit much, and they're thinking it's coming off intelligent. And I think we're all getting.
That's a really good point. And as somebody who was, believe it or not, a fan of history of Russia, Russia in the 1920s and 30s. No, because by the way, a lot of people also never understand why in Miami socialism and communism, those words get thrown out with stuff that has to do with gender and other. Actually, in the 20s and 30s, communist Russia, gender neutrality was a thing. It was like an important thing to try to create equality. So a lot of times these messages are mixed up, but even back then, you know, when you try to eliminate gender, you go back to trying to deal with what's primal. It's instinctive. For a lot of people, it's biological, it's hormonal, it's experiential,
right?
And it's all packaged in masculinity and femininity. And that's the way it's been for thousands of years. And it's likely going to be similarly positioned for thousands of years. Maybe not in the same way, maybe with much greater, I think, understanding that if you don't fall into one of those buckets, it's totally perfect.
Right.
You know,
like I mean, look at my aunt. Shout out to my aunt Jasmine, because she is I want to choose my words wisely. She's basically a tomboy and she loves it. She can fix your carburetor or whatever. If I don't know if I said that right. Yeah. She can fix your muffler.
Yeah.
She can fix her car, and she dresses pretty butch, right? She considers herself a butch woman, but she loves men. So yeah, I understand that there are people who vary in, you know, when it comes to the spectrum. But do I need, you know, I don't need to go up to her and tell her, wow, you're being too butch,
or of course not,
wow, that's toxic that you don't wear a dress. You know what I mean?
And you know what? I think that's the real point. I think when people do that expression of non-binary, like Gilbert Baker was non-binary before the word was ever there. San Francisco in the 70s was the lifeblood. Everything was non-binary and queer. You know, everything was very, it was a decade of an explosion of that kind of thinking. And I think that's very healthy for people to just understand that they're accepted and celebrated whichever way they are, with however much masculine. Listen, when we had a Caballo here on the show, he's hyper masculine.
Yeah.
Like I got things about toxic masculinity because of the way he behaved, but that's who he is.
Right.
He's just a hyper masculine person. Like there's no reason to call that toxic or to judge that any differently than somebody who's extremely feminine and maybe doesn't look like, is a man or a very masculine man that naturally is very feminine. And
well, what would be like a good example of toxic masculinity so we can differentiate? Yeah. Like, is it the, woman get in the kitchen and make me a sandwich? Is that?
I don't know. When you say that, I think of the father that is like imposing on his son to stop walking a certain way.
Yes.
And to stop holding don't do that with your wrist. And like, that's toxic. To me, that's totally toxic.
Okay.
Or a teacher that's trying to give those same kind of instructions. I think when you're rejecting people's natural way of being, their natural way of just showing who they are, it's never a good thing. Whether, it's that little kid that wants to play with Barbies. What's wrong with playing with Barbies? I mean, who cares, right? Like, and if somebody feels more in line with who they are by wearing a dress and a wig and heels and walking through town because it's giving them a sense of freedom, listen, more power to you. But at the same time, a visual, I don't care. In the 70s, you had the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence,
right?
Or you today in a wig with pumps.
Yeah,
it's unsettling a little bit.
Especially that I keep my beard on.
But that's the part. That's the part. I think when you see these visuals that don't coincide, for some people, it's unsettling. Well, and they question whether they want their kids. Like, do I really want my?
No, like, I don't want my kid, walking around with a stroller and a baby in it.
Right.
Like, even though you're probably going to do that as a father.
Exactly.
Like, it's probably normal behavior. But like, let's raise that up a level, because what I'm experiencing, because a lot of like, I like just to be fair and to be honest, I do love masculinity, right? In terms of what I appreciate in a man, I do love masculinity, but I do have a feminine side that I play with all the time. If you go to my social media, I have plenty of moments where I'm being feminine, and that's true to myself as well.
But why?
Because I like it.
Okay, but why do you like? I mean, is it?
It's just I'm not afraid to be who I am. I know that there are moments where the doors close and the blinds are closed.
But as an example, people did it a lot in the past as a way of rebelling against existence, and also rebelling against social structure. Like, I'm done with this.
I'm not trying to rebel. I'm just doing what I do. I'm being me. Like
because you like the entertainment value.
That's true. When I put it on social media, for sure, I love the entertainment value. So that's fair. That is fair to say. But I'm not going to pretend like I don't have a feminine side, right? But
I think we all have a feminine.
But into the eye, if you don't hear me talk, or if I don't talk about gay things, like, and I walk into a room, 9 out of 10 times people are going to think that I'm straight, right? Which is besides the point. We're talking about masculinity and stuff. But on this post, they were making it seem like because I am gay and because I'm masculine, I have now perpetuated this stigma that has been for the last 50 years, that we need to be as gay as we should be gay, because being gay is fun and being masculine and straight is tired.
Well, yeah. Well, I mentioned to you that younger guy that had come up to me and said he felt like he needed to be binary. He felt pressured,
right,
to be non-binary. I mean,
right. Exactly.
Yeah,
like now you're forcing me to be gay when you were telling me be yourself.
I also think that's because, remember, so many people have been bullied and over being feminine.
Yeah.
Especially men being feminine, much more than women being masculine. Men being feminine, because I think straight men are very threatened by that historically.
Yeah.
That it threatens, right? So because so many people have gone through that, there's a little bit of trauma there, which also means that when you do your thing, anybody like that finds what you do amazing and liberating, because it's like a dream, like, oh, look,
you can do that.
Right.
Yeah.
You can do that today. You
right.
know, you can do that. And, you know, for some folks, maybe they can't be masculine. You know, it's not even part of.
Right. And that's okay too if you can't be masculine.
Absolutely.
You know, but don't put that on me, right? Don't put that on others. Don't put that burden or put that, what you're feeling, that heavy weight that you have on your shoulders from stigma, from societal influences, from how your parents treated you, or what your coming out story was. That's your story. It's not mine.
Right.
So if you're having issues with my post or issues with who I am as a person, keep it to yourself. Like, what? Why do you have to put it on
but
me?
Are you
like,
seriously saying that?
Like,
I mean, we're talking about social media.
I know.
Nobody keeps anything to themselves.
I mean, it's not. I'm not gonna be like, "Yo, say it to my face, homeboy." But also, like, you know, you have the ability to scroll and not continue to spread that hate, when all that I'm trying to do is make people smile. And I'm not spreading love. I'm not going to use that dumb quote.
But you also know that no matter what, there are a lot of people who are going to look at your art and you're not going to make them smile.
No,
right? You get
100%.
Okay.
And I'm okay with that.
Right. So
I'm okay with that.
It's you know, the what you're representing to them is something you know, off the beaten path, or you know.
Yeah, but like it's like I said, when is woke too woke? You know what I mean? Like like you think that you're coming off super intelligent by saying that I have this the other term they used was internalized homophobia, that because I'm masculine, I was afraid of being feminine, and so that is an internalized homophobia that I'm experiencing.
I think those are like very pop words.
Exactly. Like, oh, okay, wokeness.
They say the same thing, internalized Hispanophobia, internalized Cuban, or whatever. You know, you can have a million internalized issues. You know.
When can you tell someone to shut up? Like, when can you like backhand someone?
Well, listen, I think if it's something that's offending you, you should be able to put them in their place, you know, and say.
Well, it's the whole like snowflake term. I don't know why that. It reminds me of that when people say you're being too sensitive, or you're being too woke for your own, you know, for your own safety. Because now what you're doing is you're closing off an entire community that is really was set on trying to be who they were, trying to be who they are, trying to continue to be inviting and inclusive and accepting.
But you realize that inclusion gets to a point where it's exclusion.
And it's
a very fine line.
Right.
So, well, for example, your art, something that you do, which is fully inclusive and it's celebrating all different kinds of genders, in another setting could be very exclusive.
Right.
It could be offensive, maybe.
Yeah.
Or off-putting. Let's use that's a better.
Right.
You know, just off-putting, only because that's their space. That's where they're at. They're just in a different.
Yeah.
You know, for them, that's not inclusive. That's not how they view inclusion.
Well, let me give you another example. So last week, I was part of a gospel brunch that SunServe did. Beautiful event, beautiful people. The leaders and directors there did a phenomenal job creating this event that was very different. Okay. It was a celebration of your soul. I wish I would have gone. It was amazing. Great. Celebration of your soul kind of event. Great food, great people, great ambiance. And so they asked a few of us to sing gospel. So I went and I was like, okay, I don't normally do gospel. I have to find gospel, you know, without appropriating, and you know what I mean? But when I tell you that everyone there was amazing to me, I was the only Cuban there, right? Obviously, there was like, I don't know, maybe 8 of us. All the singers are black. There was a violinist. I think he was white. And so none of us in the back had an issue. We were all getting along. It was phenomenal. I got to learn a lot about, you know, Black culture and what they experience. I mean, we literally had a half-hour conversation about, you know, from their grandma sitting outside, you know, rocking and just their mannerisms to them experiencing.
That's great.
To them experiencing like racism, you know, at a grocery store. And I was soaking all of this up. And now I'm proud. I love that I'm part of this.
We need to do so much more of that. That's really awesome.
So I'm having a great old time. I go out, I do my numbers. I'm feeling pumped. They're pumping me up. This is amazing, right? So yesterday, and I won't tell you the source, but yesterday I get word that someone there was super upset that I was singing gospel. Not someone in the audience was upset that I was singing gospel. What was a Cuban guy doing there singing gospel with black people?
Yeah, well, that's going to happen. I mean, you can guarantee that's going to happen. It's the same people. Like I told you, that was my issue with people of color, right? Like when I first got to college, they're like, oh, you're a person of color. And the woman telling me this was darker than I was. And I didn't understand. And I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, oh, but I'm Italian. I'm like, well, but you're darker than I am. Like, right. Okay, I'm fine being a person of color.
No, but it wasn't even. Right.
But then once I became comfortable being a person of color,
right,
and I said somewhere I was a person of color, somebody called me out and saying, you're white passing. You're not a person of color.
Right.
That's what I mean. Like you can't, people are going to be people.
Sure. But when you're,
need to try to be
what bothers me the most is that in the LGBTQ plus world, we were set out to be inclusive, to be accepting, and to be a community that is more accepting than any other, right? That was really what we keep adding letters, right. We keep adding colors to the rainbow. We want everybody to be, you know, themselves. And when you're in an environment like that, you're in an LGBTQ event, and someone in the audience who by the way, was not African American, right? Mm-hmm. To say that what was I doing there? It's crazy to me. It's like, well, what do you now? You think you're so much more intelligent. You think you're so much more woke because we've crossed the lines, because we've decided to, from one organization to the other, to support each other. And whether I am black or Asian or white, that I could be involved in a moment like this, and lend my talent, because I did it for free, right? So in my eyes, I'm like, this is a great opportunity for us to support each other.
But that's exactly why organizations like Forward Miami exist.
I know
right?
that.
Diversity and inclusion, because when you say LGBTQ is very inclusive and diverse, I would challenge that to say, yeah, we're intersectional, but we're not really very inclusive and diverse. You know, we're not doing what you just did the other day, which is great work, you know, like, and it shouldn't even be work. It should be a pleasure, right? That we just kind of share each other's stories. And I don't just mean LGBTQ, it's everybody. That's why we focus.
But we should lead, right? The LGBTQ.
I feel like we should too, because we already, it's easy for us.
Right.
We are next to each other. We're already in the same room.
Yeah.
To some degree. Unlike every other group, we do have everybody represented. We're Haitian, we're Jamaican, we're Orthodox Jews, we're, you know, born again Christians. We're everything.
Exactly.
So for us, but I also feel like that it also makes it harder for us, because we have this hyper diversity within our own.
Well, it's complex, right? There's extra layers.
It's complex, and frankly, kind of like what I was talking about with the people with gender, that, you know, hard working class family, you have enough going on. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it feels that way. LGBTQ, like you're dealing with enough to like really want to sit down and try to figure out the difference between, you know, the Cuban,
it's like, wow,
rafter and this person.
It's too much. I think it's too much, and it's creating this mindset of, you know, or it makes people way more sensitive. It makes people way more hard to be themselves. I can't post something without thinking, oh, who am I going to offend?
Yeah,
I'm scared now. And like, rather than being myself, I rather delete the post.
That's not good.
Than want to defend myself later or get canceled in this cancel culture.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's a huge thing right now. People are getting dropped off and losing money. And essentially that's what happened to me. I'm already struggling as it is.
Listen, I think it's always a good place is to, number one, never call out, never judge, never assume on people, right? Yeah. But always be committed to creating a safe space for people to celebrate whoever they are, however they are. I mean, if somebody's whatever they're going to wear, I laugh, I love it, I clap, you know, even if I'm a little disturbed, quite honestly, deep down. And I don't know why. That could be my amygdala. It might be something primal.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know why, right?
Taught.
It could be any of those things. But even there, I realized the importance of affirming people and respecting and affirming and creating that space for them. Yeah. You know, I'm going to leave and I'm going to choose how I'm going to conduct my life, right? I may not have to be in that situation again, but while I am, I want to be able to give that person.
I think a great example of that. Did you see the video of Fantasia Royale at Palace, right? And she does a lot of naked work. Like she just does little pasties in certain areas.
I missed that one.
And she's beautiful. She's a big woman, and she is gorgeous. But she's performing at Palace, so she really kind of gets half naked. And then you're seeing the screen, the camera is to her, and then it pans to two white older people, like a couple, just standing outside of Palace with their faces, like the jaws to the floor. Right. They didn't protest, they didn't scream. They were truly like interested in what was happening. They didn't know what to make of it. Right. So they had a choice, right?
Right. Exactly. They had a choice.
And they were like, we're experiencing this moment like right now. Right. They didn't know what to make of it, but they didn't pound, they didn't, protest, they didn't scream, they didn't walk off. They were just like, we're going to experience this moment. Obviously, we don't understand what's going on here.
And that's called respect. I mean, that's like when you travel and you're exposed to different cultures, it's kind of like the same thing. It may not be what you're used to or what you prefer. Yeah. But if you have respect, you're going to like allow that space and even maybe celebrate it and enjoy it, to many degrees.
Yeah. Well, I don't, I'm still teetering on that. I would love to understand why it is, and maybe we can bring Christy on, the licensed mental health counselor, to understand kind of what goes on in the mind when people lash out, especially within a community that we're trying to avoid that from people outside, from, allies and thereafter. But I think it's a very interesting topic. I still am very sensitive to it because I'm a very aggressive person, right? Like the thing I want to do is lash out, tell them off, grab them by the throat and be like, what is wrong with you? Give them a good shake.
That's not good.
It's not good.
That's not good. Pause. The pause button. That's the pause
toxic
button.
Masculinity in me.
That's there you go.
I get that from my father. And I think that's the issue, right? Is people's experience and what was taught and what they saw in their household. Right. I saw my father just be a man, right? So it didn't matter how
that's how you're qualifying being a man.
Right. Well, right.
I saw my father being a man in a very passive way.
Right.
Right. So
that's funny. So funny. You are passive. Well, you're passive, but you're definitely way more passive than I am.
Well, that's what I saw as being a man. Right. So I do think part of it is experiential, but it could also be hormonal and developmental. Maybe those are the genetics I have in my family, right? Yeah. So it's
because your brothers are different from you.
Pretty much all the same. Yeah. None of us have a huge violent temper.
Right. Well, I'm not violent. I'm just saying.
Yeah, like, grab by the throat. You're not.
But there's masculinity, and then there's violence. But I definitely saw toxic masculinity in my house. But teddy bears of guys, like
But we call that toxic masculinity today, right? In our primal form, it was called survival.
Normal. It was normal. Well, yeah,
right?
Survival.
So it's true. I think it's also an evolution. I think it's also. We've been through cycles like this before in time and I think they're healthy because they create space for people to move on. Yeah. Which didn't exist before. When I compare life, in my brother's times, my oldest brother's times, they were a lot harder for everybody than today. And I think most people would agree, but you still have these centers of, masculinity and femininity.
What's interesting is that we're a generation apart, right? But there are things that we experienced exactly like to the T. We have similar experiences, and then there are things that are very, very different. Like when you were growing up, what did you see in terms of like, do you see a difference now? Because there are coming out stories are very similar, but in terms of gender identity or the on the spectrum of being masculine and femininity, have you seen any kind of difference, or you think people are exactly the same? We're just calling it different.
I think I've seen a huge difference in people's ability to understand and to deal with it. I think it was much less, I hate the word tolerant, but much less understood back then. I think it's pretty much the same. I mean, I think, listen, when I was young, I did drag. I wore heels and, because that's what people did. And I always kind of felt stupid. I'm flat-footed for a reason. Like I'm not made for heels.
You in drag would be hilarious.
And I am who I am. And if I see a roach in front of me, you're going to see the huge femme side of me jump out, because like some weird noise is going to come out.
Same.
Right. So I think everybody is kind of built that way a little bit.
Yeah, but were they when you were growing up, right? Like, because I know from experience when I grew up, there are things I didn't want to do in front of my dad or in front of my friends that came off feminine, or in their terms, gay, right? Like, stop being so gay, right? In that sense, I was very aware of that. So I
was super aware. I remember to this day, the first time I danced or I tried to dance salsa, like some lady or girl, I think it was like an older lady, came up to me and said, "Mijo, you shouldn't move your hips like that. That's too much." And I was like, I don't think I ever moved my hips again. I think that's I think that's why I can't dance salsa.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, when I played football, I also had things that would run through my head like, why am I doing that? I shouldn't do that, you know? Right. But I think that's how people are socialized. That's kind of, there's like a normal process with that too. And I think
when you get older, you don't give a shit.
Well, like, the thing is, when you get older, you know who you are much better. Right. So of course I'm not going to put on a dress, you know?
Right.
And I remember my mom found some lipstick on her dress and she's like, "Did somebody take my dress?" I'm thinking, oh my God, now she's going to know. And that's how she thinks that's what gays are, you know?
Like all of them.
Like all of them,
all
you know?
Gays want to wear a dress.
It was the only time I have ever taken a dress, you know?
Right.
But I feel like it was good for me to do it because that's the process of elimination, of knowing where you end up, you know?
Well, this is the point I was trying to make. I feel like in that sense, not a lot has changed. I know that we have labels now for like non-binary people or queer people, right, where they can play with that. But there are people still growing up that are like, I'm not putting my hand here. Like, absolutely, no, that's gay. No, you know? Absolutely. And that's the part that's sad because our coming out stories were almost identical, exactly like, you know, our parents were confused. They cried. They didn't, you know, and it's sad to see the generation, you know, after me still have that same.
Well, good point. I think it's become more polarized in general because in my generation, you never had anybody saying that they had pressure to be like super non-binary.
True.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I felt a little pressure from my friends that I needed to be more femme, right, you know, like more fashion oriented. I mean, I was constantly called a lesbian because of my taste, but that's just the way it is, you know, like people are going to grow up and I think today that's one of the newer things that some kids feel like there's more pressure for them to don on a wig with a beard and, you know, put on pumps and
that's a weird kind of pressure, right? It's like the opposite of what I'm used to.
Right.
And it is weird in the sense it's like, why would you push someone to be non-binary or to be something they're not?
They're friends because when everybody goes out, it's fun to do.
Right.
You know, and it looks cool.
Sure. Well, the clothing now, if you look at my closet, it's pretty interesting these days because like, you know, we wear harnesses and like these crop tops and like it kind of plays on both sides. Like you could put on a skirt or you could wear jeans and kind of, you know,
but most people, see that mixture can be unsettling.
Right.
There's some people that they just identify with masculine and they like to see that, you know, the moment you have a wig and a beard, it's like, I don't want to kiss that. You know? Like it's fine. It looks great over there, but you know, stay there.
But what's interesting is that I think we're numb to it. I feel like, right? Mm-hmm. We walk into a place and we see, you know, a man with a crop top, heels, you know, but a football, you know, pant. You're gonna be like, okay, like seen that before.
Yeah, more so, but we're like this percentage. We're not, you know, that's in our bubble.
Right.
That's a true bubble.
That is a bubble.
You know, anywhere else outside of that, there's things happening, you know, for them.
Yeah, funny thing is, like, so if you see me and I, you know, we haven't gone out, but the times that I do go out, I go out with a lot of people that look like me, like not on purpose. It just happened to be that I get along with these people. You know, they go to the gym, they all have beards, they all wear the same kind of shirts, and one of my friends came up to me and goes, "You need new friends. Like you all look the same. It looks like you walk in a, you know, in a tribe." And I was like, I didn't even notice. I looked around, I was like, oh shit, yeah, we are like very, very similar. We all go to the gym.
That's why it's called a bubble.
It's very bubble.
Right.
Very bubble.
It's very bubble. It's very bubble. That's a whole nother conversation, actually. That's a whole nother show. Because what happens when you live in a bubble and then you can't anymore?
Right.
Or you actually have to move outside of that. And how do you retool for those experiences? I mean, a friend of mine moved out of this city and his bubble, and now his whole life has changed.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was talking like, oh, I don't even take shirtless pics anymore. And I'm doing this whole different thing. And, you know, and in that case, he feels has been very healthy for him.
Yeah.
But it's just a whole different range of experiences. I mean, 100%. I think that's why we're all on this journey called life, right? To kind of.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I think people age differently, right? Like when me growing up, like I do have a bubble of friends. I have very few friends, and yes, we look alike, but I have in terms of acquaintances and people I actually hang out with, varied, very diverse. I forgot what I was gonna say, but I as I grow older, things start to change. I become very comfortable with who I am. Mm-hmm. I take more shirtless pics. I post more feminine things. Things change. What's upsetting is when you're being more confident in yourself, when you're being more confident in this community, people start to bring you down with their intelligence and their wokeness. And that's what I would love to stop. I would love to have some sort of, come together moment where it's like we've agreed that we were going to be ourselves and be true to ourselves. And by knocking each other down, we're creating this hate that we wanted to avoid back since Stonewall. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And I think that's just, unfortunately, I think there's always going to be, a certain percentage of those people. And I also think that feeling comfortable about yourself goes through all kinds of phases, from being shirtless to being in pumps to being non-binary to being fully queer to, in some cases, coming in back the same way.
Right.
Being
and
less
not needing
queer.
It.
Right.
Not
Exactly.
Like saying, no, that was my old days.
And the beauty, my personal belief, the beauty of all of that is to allow and support people to go through all those ranges of things, because that's healthy. That would be like a healthy experience, I think.
I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, we can't be a perfect world. I think the best thing we could do is ignore the hate. And I'm trying. Teach me how to ignore the hate. Damian.
I think that is the best.
Because Damian, in your years, you've received hate, and I witnessed some of them.
I think you just rise above. I had a very wise woman who was actually one of my first managers in financial services. She used to run a private banking division of a major regional bank, and I learned so much from her. And she's a class act. She would just say, you need to just rise above.
Yeah.
When people go in those directions and people try to, because ultimately when you engage, they're just pulling you down. Mm-hmm. That's all that's going to happen. You might want to take them by the throat, but you're going to get arrested.
Sure. Right? No, I've already told myself not to do that.
So the best thing you can do is continue on your path and rise above, and they go away. They'll find some other new.
Well, what is it that you do to rise? I mean, you do a lot of work. You stay busy. Is that something that you use to get over things, or to not, to narrow your sight and not deal with the
No, hate? I'll tell you, for me, on a personal level, I try to stay positive, productive work. So even on my Facebook profile, it says focus on the work.
Yeah.
And that just seems to be a perfect place.
Yeah.
Because when people come with the negativity and the this and the that, I think, well, what you're bringing to this table, is that productive? Are we going to make something out of that?
Right.
Or are you just here to complain? And I try to actually help them with their feedback to say, well, okay, this is what we can do. If you don't like this, why don't you create this and that? Mm-hmm. Make them part of that solution. And then you'll figure out whether they're just complainers or whether they really do have good intentions and want to fix something.
Yeah.
Because it can be turned around, and they can actually really participate and do something good for the entire community and the group, or they can just slowly
go
away.
No, I mean, I learned that from you. That's 100% how I am now. And I think if it wasn't for me thinking positively, I think this year would have been torture, because many things have happened. But because I decided to be positive, be proactive, and engage opportunities that I saw in front of me, right? That I probably wouldn't have if I was like, poor me. I wouldn't be where I am right now. Like, we have this show.
And the other thing, you're an entertainer and you're on social media, so you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
So of course you're gonna get that kind of feedback.
Yeah.
And by the way, somebody said this, but another person that said this was Andrew Gillum, and he was quoting this other person.
Oh.
And he said, you can make sure you're guaranteed that you will be met with the same equal force as to the rise of your ascension.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
So if you're doing well and you're taking off and you're doing great things, you will be met with an equal polarity of negativity no matter what. You know,
Yes,
that freaked me out
because
I've seen that many times throughout my life with other people and with myself in certain circumstances. So keep that in mind, or anyone else that's out there and you're doing good things and you want to do good work and you're succeeding. With your success will come an equal amount of setbacks and resistance. It just kind of comes with the territory.
Absolutely. Well, this was a great show. I definitely appreciate talking to you.
No, listen, I love it. You know, we were talking on the phone, and that's why we said, you know what, we should just expand this and include everyone in the conversation. We hope you're having enjoyed this show, and we hope you're going to have a nice weekend and you enjoyed today. And we look forward to seeing you again next Friday, the Forward Miami Show.